Ian Lindsay of Lindsay and Associates has played an active role in the local community since 1979. He has been with RE/MAX, Vancouver Island's most advanced real estate business network, since 1996, marketing and selling residential, rural, strata, recreational, investment, and project development real estate. Ian has received several awards recognizing his exceptional community commitment locally, as well as awards for outstanding performance and achievement from both RE/MAX International and the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. You'll find true real estate professionals at ianlindsay.ca.
Here come Peter, here comes Dave. Oh, listen. Bringing stories, making waves, no missing. Spinning tales in the podcast cave, so sweet. Laughs and insights everywhere, what a treat. Peter and Dave, they're on the mics, all right. Join the ride, it's gonna feel just right.
If that's Rockin' Rhonda and the Uptown Blues Band with the theme song for Peter and Dave, then this must be the start of another Pulse Community podcast.
Yes, this is where we feature the people and their stories from Central Vancouver Island.
That's the voice of a man who isn't shy. He's just holding back his awesomeness in order not to intimidate us all. It's Peter McCully.
And that voice belongs to a guy who put the pro in procrastination. It's Dave Graham.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, Peter, I work at 2 speeds, slow and napping. But I'll tell you this, if I had been putting together an emergency pack, I might be working on it now feverishly, even after that last quake, huh?
Yes, that was a 5.1 magnitude shaker that knocked some things off some shelves, but fortunately, little more than that. It wasn't the kind of an earthquake that will cause a tsunami.
You know, prior to this event, any shaking that I've ever felt was so subtle, I couldn't be sure. Maybe it was a tremor, maybe it was traffic, maybe my stereo's on too loud. But for this one, I was sitting in a restaurant, and then I realized that we were moving from side to side. People's phones then began chirping earthquake alarms. But you know what? Not one person yelled or made any noises of panic. Nobody dove under their table. I don't know what anybody else was thinking, but I had dessert to finish. I mean, it was chocolate mousse. Need I say more?
Speaking of shaking it up, Dave, Donald Trump likes to do that. And with all that he said about Canada becoming the 51st state and Canada's sovereignty at risk, we talked Captain Canada into coming out of retirement and went out to chat with you in our You Said It segment. We wanted to know how you're showing your patriotism these days.
Neil and Donna in the News Bay. Just so you know. Okay. Product of Canada. What else we got here? Product of Canada. Believe it or not, product of Morocco. Hang on. Product of Egypt.
I don't know why I put anything in the bag.
I think this was out of Mexico or Guatemala. Do I pass?
Yes. Now Dave has a question for you, though.
Have you always shown this kind of support for Canada?
At one time, the United States of America was considered a great friend. No longer.
Have things irrevocably changed in your mind?
At least for 4 years, at least.
So that dictates your spending habits possibly for that long?
You bet.
Did you watch the game?
I did. From Nanaimo Golf Club. I phoned my buddy in Nevada. He didn't want to talk to me.
It's flu and RSV season. We have an update from Dr. Tribesty Nguyen of Island Health.
One of the common things that I hear is folks might say something like, I got the flu vaccine last year, and so I don't need to get it again this year. But we know that this also isn't quite true because it's one of those viruses that changes a lot. It mutates pretty quickly, it evolves pretty quickly. And so the actual influenza virus that circulates, that moves around our community is different every single year, which is why we typically get a different influenza vaccine made every year for us. We use a different vaccine every year. That's why it's important, because every year there's going to be an updated vaccine, which is different than the one that you got last year.
Captain Canada, whom could be seen for many years in the Parksville, Qualicum Beach area, especially in the Canada Day parades and other events, has come out of retirement. Dave had a chance to chat with him.
As tensions rise over recent U.S. political rhetoric about annexing Canada, we sit down with the Great White North's Captain Canada to discuss this unprecedented situation. Captain Canada, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Dave. Glad to be here.
What was your initial reaction to U.S. politicians suggesting Canada could become the 51st state?
Suggesting we're up for grabs is a bit much, even for our neighbors to the south.
You know, Captain Canada, you don't look a day older than when you hung up the cape a few years back. Obviously, you feel strong enough to come out of retirement to show your patriotism. Have you seen a lot of folks showing their love of Canada lately?
Yes, actually, I have. I've seen a lot more flags being displayed and shoppers checking where things are made from. I believe we will be stronger as a result.
How do you respond to critics who say Canada is too polite to stand up for itself?
Sorry, being polite doesn't mean passive. We're like a hockey player, respectful of the game, but ready to drop the gloves when necessary. From Nunavut to Nova Scotia, we're showing that our strength comes from our unity in diversity.
Your shield is made of indestructible Canadian maple. Any truth to rumors it's been upgraded recently?
We've added a poutine-based force field, but let's just say it's getting harder to mess with the true north.
Your arch nemesis claims Canada would benefit from American liberation. Your response?
The orange one needs to understand that different doesn't mean wrong. We are different, we are special, and it's worth protecting.
What's your message to young Canadians worried about these developments?
Stay strong, stay proud, keep your stick on the ice and your head up. We've faced challenges before, and we've always come through stronger in the long run.
There's speculation about American superheroes being dispatched for friendly patrols, quote unquote, in Canadian airspace. Thoughts?
They're welcome to join me for a double-double on the boat, but they should call first. It's only polite.
How do you balance protecting Canadian interests while maintaining our reputation for peacekeeping?
It's like playing defense in hockey. You can be firm without being aggressive. On occasion, you need to hip check a supervillain into the boards.
Your power suit is rumored to run on pure Canadian spirit. What exactly does that mean?
It's powered by Nova Scotian roots to my home on Vancouver Island, in addition to universal healthcare, multiculturalism, and Tim Hortons coffee, and maybe a little bit of maple syrup for an extra boost.
Any final words for those suggesting Canada should become the 51st state?
Thanks for the offer, but we're not for sale. We are doing just fine standing on guard for thee, though we're always happy to collaborate on saving the world, just as equals, eh?
Last question. If you could say one thing to all Canadians right now, what would it be?
Remember what makes us unique. Our strength isn't in military might or economic power alone. It's in our values, our diversity, and our ability to work together while staying true to who we are. Also, please stop leaving your toques in the phone booths. I keep getting them mixed up with mine.
Captain Canada, it's been a great honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure.
And here's what listeners told Dave and Captain Canada about how they were showing their patriotism these days.
Cam and Wendy, we're from Belzer.
Simple question for you.
You've been shopping today?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Did you express your support of Canada with your dollars?
Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
Excellent. Oh, this is the standard practice for you.
Yes.
Very good.
It's accentuated now.
Accentuated.
Yes.
We always have, but now we make a concentrated effort.
Yeah.
We won't buy anything that isn't Canadian or from anywhere but the U.S., to be honest. We're just feeling that way. Audrey. Parksville. I normally go for the best price, but now I'm definitely looking at what I'm buying before I put it in my cart.
Did it take much longer?
No.
Did it cost much more?
No, because I'm finding that there's a lot of Canadian stuff on sale now. I think the stores are really cluing into what consumers want now. Is shop Canadian.
How are you?
I'm good. What are you guys doing?
Captain Canada.
Dave has a question for you. He's wondering if you changed your shopping habits
As a result of our neighbors to the south.
Absolutely. Canada or Mexico. That's it.
Has this been a common practice or just lately you?
Oh, no, just lately. Go Canada, go.
Neil and Donna in the News Bay. Just so you know. Okay. Product to Canada. What else we got here? Product to Canada. Believe it or not, product of Morocco. Hang on. Product of Egypt.
I don't know why I put anything in the bag.
I think this was either Mexico or Guatemala. Do I pass?
Yes. Now Dave has a question for you, though.
Have you always shown this kind of support for Canada?
At one time, the United States of America was considered a great friend. No longer.
Have things irrevocably changed in your mind?
At least for 4 years, at least.
So that dictates your spending habits possibly for that long?
You bet.
Did you watch the game?
I did. From Nanaimo Golf Club. I phoned my buddy in Nevada. He didn't want to talk to me.
Did you support Canada with your grocery dollars today?
I didn't. I didn't know where my groceries came from. I just was hungry. Thankful for them.
What's your first name?
Derek.
Where are you from, Derek?
I'm born in Edmonton, Alberta, and moved here a few years ago so my daughter could grow up with the mountains and the oceans and stuff.
Oh, nice move. Thanks for chatting with us.
God bless you. Take care. Thanks. Dad in Canada.
Suzanne.
Suzanne?
I live in Qualicum Beach.
Our question for today is, are you expressing your support for Canada with your spending dollars?
Yes, absolutely. Everything that I pick is from Canada or otherwise. I'm being very choosing.
Now, is this a recent development, or have you always practiced this?
I try, but probably more so lately.
So we could probably predict your answer to your thoughts on Canada becoming the 51st state.
No. No, thank you. No, nothing. No. Just no.
Ann and Peter, and we're from Nanoose.
And our question today is, are you directing your spending dollars in support of Canada?
Yes, we are.
Always or just lately?
It's only since this nonsense started behavior that we've changed our behavior.
Have your thoughts of your sense of being a Canadian changed at all? Or?
Not mine, but I noticed a lot of people feeling a lot more Canadian than they did 2-3 weeks ago.
Isn't it great for us, though, to be perhaps expressing our patriotism a bit more?
I think it's a good thing, yeah.
Warren from Parksville.
And Christina,
Thank you.
from Parksville.
Our question today is, are you expressing your patriotism with your dollars?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, fully, yeah.
Now, has this been a recent development or just more focused lately or what?
A little more focused. I want to shop local, spend my money in my local community, but now it's even more than ever, which is sad that it came to this.
Yeah, same thing, more focused, and also trying to encourage people to close their Amazon accounts and shop local, support small business. People want to be patriotic about Canada. Well, that's something that we should be focusing on all the time, I feel.
You look great.
Thanks.
Are you expressing your patriotism through your shopping dollars?
Yes.
Always have or just more lately?
Oh, way more lately. Never had to think about it before that.
Yeah.
Got lazy.
So, do you feel you're just more patriotic now?
Yeah, a blend of that and angry. Yeah, that's how she goes. No one likes a bully.
Where are you from, Jim?
Parksville.
Thanks a lot. Could I ask your first name?
Beverly. I'm still an American after all these years, just because the paperwork was so complicated and I had to go back to school and all those things. But now that things are like they are elsewhere, it's time.
We've just been asking people if they've been using their shopping dollars to express their support of Canada.
Well, the tomato came from Mexico. The toilet paper is made in Canada. Well, it says produced in Canada. I spent the last shopping trip in here with other little old ladies, helping them read labels. So people are really making an effort to buy Canadian, or not American, let's put it that way.
Yes. You've only become a Canadian.
Well, yes, and it's the right time to do it because then I can probably just do my thing on Canada Day.
Well, welcome to the club. We're just out today asking if you are expressing your patriotism through your shopping dollars.
I totally am.
Yes? Always have? Just recently?
Probably just recently.
Do you feel more Canadian?
I've always felt Canadian.
Wayne, Berwick, Parksville.
And our question today is, do you spend your dollars in a way as to express your patriotism, your support of Canada?
Yes.
Always have? More recently?
No, more recently.
Yeah.
I even canceled Facebook. Everything that's coming from the U.S. I've canceled. Non-alcoholic gin I don't buy anymore because it's all American. All the Canadian distilleries supply the rest of Canada, but not the island, if you can believe that, for non-alcoholic. So that's got to be fixed.
So you're making sacrifices here?
Yes, definitely.
Juliana. We live in Nanoose now. We moved here a year and a half ago.
Wow. So today's question is, are you using your spending dollars in support of Canada?
Damn right I am.
A lot more lately or always have?
I love shopping local, so it's always been on my mind, but now I am vigilant and I go out of my way to read and research
in that direction. Absolutely.
Any other changes in habits or approaches since things have been changing south of the border? Travel plans, anything like that?
That is significant. I'm a dual citizen, and I don't want to go into the States. And I have family there, and I want to visit, but I'm really dragging my heels on that. My son's there, and my dad's there, and my mom's there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a big deal.
Thank you so much for participating.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Can I have a photo with you?
Oh, sure. So are you expressing your patriotism with your shopping dollars?
I'm trying, but today I couldn't because of the oranges, or you can't grow oranges in Canada, right?
But you're trying.
I am. I
Yeah.
do look at stuff, yes.
Now, is this a recent development, or has always sort of been part of your
Well,
habits?
I've always been pissed off with Canada because you can't seem to get anything made in this country, right? And maybe this will wake us up.
I'm Dave, he's Peter. We're with the Pulse Podcast with Captain Canada today because we're talking about Canada and our sense of patriotism. And have you changed your shopping habits at all lately?
I look for Canadian, definitely. Yeah, prefer buy Canadian over anywhere else.
Now, is this a recent development or always been this way?
More so.
We're here with Captain Canada because we're talking about Canada and our patriotism.
Since Trump got in, we've been yelling more. Someone said to me yesterday, we're very complacent. And I said, you're right. We're too complacent. We should stick up for ourselves more.
How are you?
I'm good.
If you don't mind, Dave's got a question for you.
We are out today with Captain Canada inquiring as to your sense of Canadianism, patriotism. Are you changing your spending habits in support of Canada?
I absolutely am. I will only buy made in Canada or imported from Italy or other provinces.
Wow, that sounds pretty absolute.
Very absolute.
So you drew a line in the sand. Is this just recently then? Something in particular just was the last straw?
President Musk and Puppy Trump. I don't need to buy their products. There's nothing I have to have that's not Canadian. If it's not Canadian or imported, I can do without them.
Good for
I'm
you.
not fussy. I'll eat anything. I like leftovers too, so.
Could I get your first name?
Joanne. I'm from Parksville.
This is a special day when we're out talking to people about their spending habits. Have they changed recently, supporting Canada?
Absolutely.
Yes, always have, just lately.
I always have, but even more so now. I'm not giving the orange man any of my money.
Today we're asking about people and their spending habits and if they're spending more on Canadian goods kind of thing.
I always have. I always look for BC, Canada products. Now I'm even more so. The only thing that I buy that's U.S. is my lemons and oranges. Today I was going to pick up some broccoli, but it was made in the U.S. Forget it. You know what? We have to support our country. We live in one of the best countries of the world. We're very, very fortunate. So, and it's not all the American people down there. It's just the government. So hopefully only 4 years. You know, United States has always been a partner with Canada. Like they've always been like the big brother, and we've always worked well together. This is the first time in history. I've lived here all my life, and I thought, we're so lucky to be here.
Whereabouts are you from, Cheryl?
I'm living in Noose. You guys have a great day.
Roy and Penny, we're from Parksville. Since the election, we've been watching all the products that we buy. And I'd say we're probably 95% Canadian if we can. Sometimes you gotta go the other way, but we try our best to do Canadian all the way.
Are you then relenting and buying other non-Canadian, or are you just sacrificing and say, we'll do without?
A little bit of both. We'll sacrifice a few things, like some fresh fruits that you get from the States, like oranges and things like that you can't get now and whatnot. But other than that, we try our best to buy Canadian all the way.
Our question today is, are you expressing your sense of patriotism through your shopping dollars?
No.
No.
Not at all. But you guys got to understand, boycotting anything at all to you, that's absolutely stupid. Trump is the best thing that's happened in sliced bread. I'm a firm believer in what he does. He's a salesman. He's also a gambler. One good thing he done about it, he put Trudeau to the boots. Also, I have a MAGA hat that my daughter doesn't let me wear. Anything else you want to know?
Just your first name and where you're from.
Murray. I live in San Periel and Parksville.
Thank
but
you.
I am a Canadian, too.
We're asking people today if they're expressing their patriotism through their shopping dollars.
We are.
Yes. Always have?
Not always, no. Until we start label things that Canadian, and it brings it to your attention, and we put a few things back because they weren't.
So a bit of a sacrifice on your part.
Well, yes, I wanted it. Can't remember what it was. I guess I didn't want it that badly, but I put it back in.
Where are you from?
Peter and Mary, and we're from Kingston, Ontario.
Kingston, beautiful Kingston, lovely.
Well, escaping the winter, we decided not to go south this year and stay in Canada.
Captain,
the one and only.
You're not Colonel Canada?
Nor Governor.
Dave
Yes.
has a question
Yes.
for you.
We're asking today how people are expressing, if they are, their patriotism through their shopping dollars.
Buy Canadian, there is.
And is this a recent development for you or always been?
Long time. Absolutely.
We're with the captain today because we're talking about being Canadian and patriotic.
Yes.
And are you expressing your patriotism through your shopping dollars?
Oh, absolutely. And I am delighted that the hockey match went like it did. You know, bad luck. There aren't many people who are as Canadian as us, but, you know, they can keep trying.
Whereabouts are you from, Carolyn?
I'm right from Victoria. I've been here for 60 years.
Oh, yes.
But from before that, I was from England.
Are you expressing your patriotism through where you're spending your shopping dollars?
I absolutely am. I'm looking for as many Canadian-made, Canadian-purchased items as I can. There's going to always be things that you can't get that are not here in Canada, but doing my best to support the Canadian economy for sure.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you denying yourself anything in order to not support American products?
Fresh berries. I just bought what I wanted before, and now I'm thinking more of where that money's going and how we can support our Canadian farmers.
So in a sense, this could have a really good spin for Canadian producers and farmers, etc.
One would hope it could have a very good spin. Yeah, I think that's everybody's intent. It'll just depend on what happens with tariffs and the rest of it and how much we can do to make them feel that as little as possible.
Are you using your shopping dollars in support of Canadian products?
Damn right.
Always or just more recently?
More recently.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you have had sort of an eye towards Canadian products in the past.
Oh, yeah.
But now a true focus.
You bet.
If you said, I can't get it in Canada, I'm not going to have it for now.
Can't say that I have found anything
Not
just yet.
Captain Canada speaking his truth during these challenging times and looking very dapper as well.
Yes, he was able to make that leotard work. Truly a remarkable Canadian with solid calves. Hey, thanks to Thrifty Foods, we have another winner with our Tickle Trunk contest.
Cindy Lister of Parksville, congratulations. She knew that the Tickle Trunk was hidden in the most used indoor recreational facility in the area. That would be the Ravensong Aquatic Center. After 30 years, the facility's in need of work and expansion to the tune of an estimated $30 million.
Yes, and what do you figure the odds are that that number will change? It's time now to focus on our next Tickle Trunk hiding spot. This is a research and education facility operated by Vancouver Island University in Lighthouse Country. It's a place of aquaculture research and marine science education. This is where you can interact with sea stars and sea cucumbers, and this is where you'll find the Tickle Trunk.
So email your answer to contest@thepulsecommunity.ca. We'll randomly draw from the correct answers and award a $25 gift certificate from Thrifty Foods.
At Thrifty Foods, we love to help nonprofits, charities, and schools. Our Thrifty Foods Smile Card bulk program allows organizations to immediately save up to 6% on the purchase of Smile Cards in bulk, allowing you to keep more money in your organization's pockets. Ask for details at Thrifty Foods in Parksville, a proud sponsor of the Pulse podcast with Peter and Dave.
The Pulse Community Podcast is brought to you in part by Windsor Plywood in French Creek, specializing in hard-to-source interior and exterior home finishing products, including flooring, doors, and moldings, and exterior project materials such as yellow cedar. Windsor Plywood French Creek carries high-quality, responsibly sourced products and are committed to providing outstanding value and personalized, one-on-one service to all of our customers, homeowners, do-it-yourselfers, renovators, builders, designers, craftsmen, and contractors. Regardless of the type or size of your project, Windsor can help you bring your vision to life from start to finish. Let Windsor Plywood in French Creek help you with your renovation, new build, or building project. Visit them online or call 752-3122.
We welcome your input to the Pulse Community Podcast. After all, we're at our best when the conversation goes both ways. So we welcome your comment on something or anything you might have heard or thought of. You know the idea.
Dave, we had a few emails and social media comments from listeners who said they as well had experienced a Bigfoot sighting. Perhaps you'd like to comment on that, or something that you'd like to hear on the podcast, or anything else for that matter. You can use the Speak to Us link to send us your message in your voice.
Or just type us a note, follow the link in the story notes and on the contact page on our website, thepulsecommunity.ca. Add your voice or words to the conversation.
In a future podcast, we're going to be hearing from a fellow podcaster, Laura Palmer of Port Alberni. Laura produces a podcast that stands out from what is a crowded field. I'm speaking of true crime. Tune in to hear about Laura and her Island Crime podcast series, now with Season 7.
We are going to be hearing soon from Bob McDonald, the host of CBC's Quirks and Quarks. He has come out with a memoir. It is an inspiring story that describes overcoming significant obstacles on a journey to success. Bob tells his story in the book, Just Say Yes, and he will be on a future episode.
Plus, we have news about this year's Parksville Beach Festival with Cheryl Dill and Lloyd Derry. The festival's far more than sand sculptures. And Dwayne Round will be coming on soon to talk about this spring's pop-up recycling events.
Yes, pop-up recycling. Thank goodness I'm going to make it to one of these this year. And I say this year because it's been piling up. My laundry room is being overrun by glass jars and styrofoam packaging. In fact, since I got my heat pump put in, and I'm not saying what year that happened, and the old furnace taken out, the spot where the furnace was is now filled with packaging that will not be accepted by the standard service. So thank goodness for this opportunity to divert material otherwise destined for the landfill and get it out of my house. More about that with Dwayne on a future Pulse Community podcast.
While the most recent provincial statistics indicate a drop in the number of COVID cases, there has been an increase in numbers related to the cases of flu and RSV. We have a doctor in the house to discuss further. Marilyn, who is in the green room?
Medical Health Officer Resident Dr. Tribesty Nguyen of Island Health is in the green room. Dr. Nguyen updates what's happening on Vancouver Island with the flu, RSV, and COVID viruses.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Doctor.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
What are the current trends we're seeing with the flu and RSV on Vancouver Island compared to last year at this time?
For the flu, which is influenza virus, what we're seeing on the island, and this is the same across BC as well, is that the rates are actually currently on the rise. We're still seeing more and more people get sick with the flu. We're not over the hill yet, so to speak. So that's what's happening right now. When we compare this trend to what was happening last year, there's a couple of things to note. For one thing, we're seeing that the peak of the flu season is happening later this year than it happened last year. So what this really means is that people are getting sick later into the year. Just as an example, last year, our peak of the flu season was around the end of December, beginning of January. But this year, we're now way through February and we're still seeing a rise in cases. So people are getting sicker later into the year. That's one change that's happening this year. The other thing is that just overall, we're seeing more cases. The peak of this year, the current period that we're in, has more people getting sick than the peak last year. And so those are just some of the general trends. I think what this really means is that we're not out of the woods yet this time of the year for this year, which is why it's still important and still relevant for people today to get vaccinated. You can still go to the pharmacy, you can still get your influenza vaccine. It's still free and it's still good to get today because cases are still rising. When we're looking at RSV, which was the other virus that you were talking about, it's another respiratory virus. What we're seeing there is something a little bit different. So we're seeing that the cases there are starting to decrease a little bit. Less and less people are starting to get sick. We're kind of over the hill. You can kind of say that. That being said, though, people are still getting sick. It's not like it's gone. I think it's still important for people to continue to practice their good hygiene practices, you could say, washing their hands a lot, making sure that when you're coughing into your sleeve or into your elbow, staying home when you're sick. For RSV, even though it's starting to decline, I don't think we can take our pedal off the gas yet, so to speak, right? We need to keep doing what we're doing. Well, that's what's happening with RSV.
Could you take us through what's been happening with COVID this season?
COVID has been on the decrease. It's actually been declining recently. So we're seeing less and less COVID cases in the community. For this year, it's actually been declining since the past summer. So we've been seeing kind of a declining trend over the last 6 months. We're seeing less and less people get sick, less and less people in the hospital from COVID, for example. But the thing about COVID is that we're not quite sure what the seasonality of COVID is going to be like. So when we talk about influenza, the flu, and RSV, usually that's a seasonal type of pattern. With COVID, we're still a little bit unsure about. So again, with the influenza, I'd say that's still important to get vaccinated for COVID because even though it's on the decline, some people are still getting sick, particularly older people, people who have some underlying medical conditions, people who are immunocompromised, for example. So people are still getting sick from these.
I was just going to ask you, Dr. Nguyen, what populations are currently most vulnerable to severe outcomes from those respiratory viruses?
It's different for each virus, but what I would say, and this is in very, very general terms, we usually see the younger folks, so younger children. It's older folks, so people who are 65 years and above. It's people who have other medical conditions, things like lung diseases, chronic COPD, people with asthma, people with heart disease, people with immunocompromising conditions. These are the people that we see most vulnerable to respiratory illnesses. That's a kind of like a blanket statement for those kind of different vulnerable groups. Each of the viruses, though, look a little bit differently. For example, COVID is a disease that we see older people have a greater risk of severe disease rather than younger people. So younger people less so for COVID. For RSV, it's almost the opposite. So severe disease is actually mostly seen in younger people, those between 0 and 5 years old, for example. We still see severe outcomes with older people as well, but most of the time it's in younger people, if that makes sense. The flu, influenza, is kind of in between. We see older people have most of the severe consequences, severe disease. We also see some young people have severe disease as well. It's a little bit different between each of the viruses, but in general, I'd say the 4 kind of major risk groups. So young people, people who are older than 65 years old, people with those underlying medical conditions I was talking about, and people who are immunocompromised. And so those are the big vulnerable groups.
Doctor, you mentioned that flu was pretty active right now. Could you talk about the effectiveness of the season's flu vaccine and how it matches up against the current circulating strains?
So this is a great question. We are only really halfway through the influenza season, so we only really have half of the data so far this year. But the preliminary data that we have, which is up until mid-January, it's showing that those who get the influenza vaccine, it's reduced their risk for needing to see a doctor by about half, a little more than half. In other words, if you get the vaccine, you're half as likely to get so sick that you need to be seeking care. You're so sick that you need to see the doctor, or you're so sick that you need to go to a clinic or the urgent primary care center, or so sick that you need to see the hospital. So it halves your risk for that. If we look at the data for the past 10 years, this is pretty typical. So about half what we're seeing this year is pretty typical. The last 10 years, it's kind of ranged between 40 and 70% protection. I'm not a biochemist, so I can't get too technical in the details. But when we look at the studies that talk about matching, what they're really looking at matching is, at the very, 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 very small, tiny genetic sequences. The way that we can maybe kind of think about it is if you have 2 different books, one book only differs in one sentence. You can say that those 2 books are not the same book. They don't match each other perfectly. But if you have 2 students, one student is studying off of one book, another student is studying off of the other book, and they go write an exam, they're both probably going to pass. They're both probably going to do pretty much the same in the exam. And so that's kind of the way that we can think of the matching of the vaccine with the virus as well. The vast majority of the vaccine is still effective. And that's why I think we still see a little bit above half of people reducing their risk for having to go to the hospital, having to see their doctor, getting so sick that they need to do that. So I wouldn't worry too much about whether the vaccine is matching or not. I would just get the vaccine.
That's a great analogy, by the way. Well, what patterns are you seeing in terms of co-infections, people getting multiple respiratory viruses at the same time?
I think if we look into the data, we look into the literature, the numbers are going to vary. We see maybe about 10 to 20% of respiratory infections have co-infection. When we get infected with a virus like the flu or with COVID or with RSV, our body is working really hard to fight that infection. And our immune system's becoming really active. And because of that, our body becomes a little bit more vulnerable to other infections. And so that's why it's easier for another respiratory virus to kind of come in and also infect you at the same time. What may be more significant, though, is not a co-infection with another virus, but actually what we call a secondary infection with a bacteria, because many types of bacteria will cause a disease, a secondary infection that can become very severe. So there's lots of bacteria out there. There's pneumonia bacteria. There are bacteria that cause meningitis. These bacteria, when our bodies are vulnerable from fighting an infection, we talked about vulnerable groups earlier. So if we have underlying medical conditions, maybe we're already immunocompromised, maybe we're a little bit older and our immune system is a little bit weaker, it's easier for these bacteria to cause an infection. On the positive side of things is that we have vaccines. We have vaccines to protect against most of these bacteria. We have vaccines against pneumonia. We have vaccines against meningitis. We have vaccines against Haemophilus influenza bacteria. And these are all free vaccines. They're all publicly funded. They're already a part of our routine childhood vaccine schedule as well. Adults who have missed these vaccines can still go get them for free. So it's available to protect ourselves against these secondary bacterial infections or co-infections.
You mentioned that COVID was on the decline and the flu was on the increase. Could you talk about the current vaccination rates on Vancouver Island? What are you seeing?
On the island, and this is kind of also very similar across BC, this year, we only have data up until currently. So it's really only about half the year, half of the season, you could say. We are currently seeing for COVID, about 28.5% of the population have gone to get the COVID vaccine this year. That doesn't include previous years. It just means this year. If we compare that to last year, we had about 36.5%. The year before that, we had about 39%. And that is for the whole year. Again, remember, we're just talking about half the year right now. So, by the end of this year, maybe the numbers will increase a little bit. But I think what that shows is that year over year, people are tending to get less vaccinated. That's very similar to influenza as well. Halfway through the year, we've had about 31% of people get an influenza vaccine. It was a little higher last year. It was a little higher the year before. People are not getting vaccines as they used to in the previous years. I think what that causes is the risk for diseases in our community to spread to increase. I think it's really important to get vaccines because, say, I go and get the influenza vaccine. I'm protecting myself from getting severe disease. I'm protecting myself from having to go to the hospital. But I'm also protecting my loved ones. I'm protecting my mom. I'm protecting my grandma, who might be more vulnerable to these diseases. I'm protecting my family, my friends, my coworker, because when I get vaccinated, I'm less likely to give these diseases to the people that are around me. And so the risk that we run if we continue to go down this hill of declining vaccination rates.
What are the most popular misconceptions you're running into from patients about respiratory viruses?
In my line of work, I don't really see patients a whole lot anymore. So most of the time, I kind of hear these stories from my coworkers or the nurses that I'm working with. But one of the common things that I hear is folks might say something like, I got the flu vaccine last year, and so I don't need to get it again this year. But we know that this also isn't quite true because it's one of those viruses that changes a lot. It mutates pretty quickly, it evolves pretty quickly. And so the actual influenza virus that circulates, that moves around our community is different every single year, which is why we typically get a different influenza vaccine made every year for us. We use a different vaccine every year. That's why it's important, because every year there's going to be an updated vaccine, which is different than the one that you got last year. And so it's important to kind of keep up to date and keep getting updated, so you're protecting yourself against different types of strains. The other common thing that I've heard is some people will say, oh, I have some leftover antibiotics. I'm going to take some antibiotics to treat my flu or my cold. The flu is a virus. Common cold is also a virus. And you can't use an antibiotic to kill a virus. So viruses and bacteria are very different things. So that's another misconception, that antibiotics are something that we can use for flus and for common cold and for respiratory viruses. So if you are sick with the flu or with a cold and you feel sick enough that you think you need to look for care, you should go see a doctor first. Go to your family doctor, go to a walk-in clinic, urgent primary care center, go to the hospital if you really, really need to. Folks can also call 811 as well. It's a free 24-hour nursing hotline that you can also call for health information and advice. Seek that care just to make sure that you're getting the right treatment for what it is that you have, because antibiotics aren't the solution for everything.
Dr. Nguyen, I can't let you go without asking you about the avian flu or the bird flu. It's pretty hard not to watch the evening news without hearing something about avian flu in a poultry flock in some parts of British Columbia, particularly south of the border. There seems to be a lot going on. How worried should we be about the avian flu?
That's a great question as well. I would say in general, the general public, like myself, for example, I don't really work on an farm, and I work with chickens, which is probably most people in our community. The risk to the general public is very low. In Canada, we don't see avian flu transmitted from person to person. We really only see it circulating, as you mentioned, on poultry farms, between flocks of birds. In very rare circumstances, for example, earlier this year, we did have a human case. So the virus did come from a bird to infect a human. But it kind of stops there. It doesn't spread from person to person. We haven't seen that yet. And so that's why the risk to the public is generally pretty low. I know that our farms are monitored very regularly. There's surveillance programs, our chicken farms are going under testing. And so that's being watched very carefully as well.
Dr. Tribesty Nguyen, thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Peter, and the opportunity to chat with you for a little bit.
Dr. Tribesty Nguyen on the Pulse Community Podcast. Common medical advice has changed over the years. Coughs and sneezes now go into your elbow, not your hand. It used to be just cover your mouth or nose if you cough or sneeze, and I guess you wipe your hand on your pants or something. That's the old way. Science has advanced in the years since I was a kid. Remember the old adage, feed a cold, starve a fever? Apparently that's just an old wives' tale. Oh, am I allowed to still say that? Anyway, hydration, always a key element if you're feeling ill for whatever reason. Drink lots. As for feeding or starving, forget about it. Modern science has revealed all, and it says, if you're hungry, eat.
Oceanside Seaweed. That little pot shop is Parksville's first licensed cannabis store. Since April 2022, Seaweed is under new ownership. With a product expert at the helm, that includes 2 decades of retail mastery and 7 years in the cannabis industry, Seaweed is a legacy in the making, with cannabis products regulated by Health Canada. Community-minded Seaweed is a member of the Parksville Chamber of Commerce, the Parksville Downtown Business Association, and the Retail Cannabis Council of British Columbia. Those 19+ can drop by the store at 154 Middleton Avenue next to Tablet Pharmacy. Open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Weekends and holidays, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Visit the online store at seaweedoceanside.ca.
A parallel project to the Pulse Community Podcast is an offering for the younger listeners. It's called Skookum Kid Stories, original stories with new ones being added regularly. That includes the adventures of Dave and the Mellow Submarine, as narrated by Dave Graham. Coming soon, Dave and his crew work to repair a communications cable to Lasqueti Island.
Our other series follows the fun with Peter and Gracie the Eskimo Dog, narrated by Peter McCulley. And if you happen to have a story idea, we hope you would share it with us. Maybe it'll show up in a future Skookum Kid story. To reach us for that or anything else, follow the links on the contact page on our website, thepulsecommunity.ca.
Ian Lindsay of Lindsay & Associates has played an active role in the local community since 1979. He has been with RE/MAX, Vancouver Island's most advanced real estate business network since 1996, marketing and selling residential, rural, strata, recreational, investment, and project development real estate. Ian has received several awards recognizing his exceptional community commitment locally, as well as awards for outstanding performance and achievement from both RE/MAX International and the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. You'll find true real estate professionals at ianlindsay.ca.
So I'm wondering if anyone has a story to share from the recent earthquake that was centered on the mainland but felt on the island. Where were you?
Luckily, there won't be any stories of significant damage from all of this, Dave, but we would like to hear what the experience was like.
I felt a sense of uncertainty and imbalance for a time after the shaking, not literally feeling imbalanced like I might fall over, but feeling that if I cannot count on the ground being steady and still, what else might happen?
It's the first time I've ever felt an earthquake. Many times in the office, folks have said, "Did you feel that?" And I felt nothing. But this one actually made my desk shake at home. I'm not eager for that to happen again anytime soon, though, I'll tell you. A reminder that episode 8 of the Pulse podcast featured a chat with Taimee Mulder of Victoria, a seismologist, if you'd like to hear what she has to say about the big one. We've run out of time for this episode. So, Dave, would you like to join me for today's special in the cafeteria? It's on me.
Hey, sure. I've asked Mabel to lighten up on the fried food, maybe feature more salads and fish and veggies, you know, the healthy stuff.
Really?
After seeing Captain Canada rocking that spandex, I realized that I really need to look at some changes in my diet.
Well, good for you.
No, really, I'm going to start making healthier food choices.
Well, you sound serious about this.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to put my foot down at lunch today. I'm going to tell Mabel, no, Mabel, I will not have a third slice of pie. Thank you.
Here come Peter, here comes Dave. Oh, listen. Bringing stories, making waves. No missing. Spinning tales in the podcast cave. So sweet. Laughs and insights everywhere. What a treat. Peter and Dave, they're on the mic, so